They kicked me out of the family group chat the day after I bought my $800 junk house. No fight, no screaming, just erasure. Hi, I'm Marin. I was supposed to use that money to pay for my sister's luxury retreat. Instead, I bought 4 crumbling walls and a sagging roof because for once I chose me. But what hurt most wasn't being cut off. It was realizing they never truly saw me in the first place. And when my sister came back smiling, streaming, and turning my life into content, I knew silence wouldn't protect me anymore. Have you ever been the one left out of the photo? The one no one claps for? Tell me, what would you have done? I didn't cry when I bought the house. Didn't cry when I signed the papers at that rust-colored folding table, or when the notary handed me the single bent key. I didn't even cry when I first saw it up close, the way the roofline sagged like an old man's shoulders, the siding peeling in long, exhausted strips. But the morning after I opened my phone and saw it, or rather didn't see it, the family group chat, gone. Like I'd never been there at all. They didn't scream. That wasn't their way. The Holtz family was polished silence. We smoothed things over with tight smiles and brittle toasts. When you failed to perform, when you stopped showing up exactly as expected, they didn't punish you. They erased you. The gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped out of the car. The November sky was the color of old dishwater, and the chill slid under my jacket like it belonged there. I walked around the front of the house, staring up at its crooked windows. One of them had been boarded up with a piece of particle board that someone had spray-painted "Help" across in faded red. Seemed about right. From the trunk, I pulled out my old lawn chair, the one I used on lunch breaks, writing grants on my phone and pretending I liked the sun. I set it in the gravel, sat down, and let the silence settle around me. The seat sagged more than I remembered. The rain started as a whisper, then steadied into a rhythm on my hood. The house didn't look like a beginning, but it was mine. A week ago, I was sitting at my parents' long mahogany table in the seat closest to the pantry, always the edge, never the center. The roast was dry, the wine too sweet like it was compensating. Brielle was going on about her Sedona retreat. 15 grand, Mom said, like she was announcing a wedding. But she needs it. To reset her energy. Brielle gave that soft, saintly smile she'd perfected since 8th grade. I kept my eyes on my plate. Then Dad turned to me. You said you were transferring the funds last week. I set my fork down. I didn't transfer the money. The room paused. Even Brielle held her wine still. I bought a house, I said. It's a fixer-upper. But it's mine. No one spoke. Then Mom blinked. What do you mean you bought a house? Dad's voice dropped calm and cold. You spent your savings. On yourself. Brielle let out a soft laugh. You bought a dump instead of helping me reset. That's very on brand. I never agreed to pay for it, I replied. I just didn't say no. Mom set her glass down. You've clearly chosen poverty. Dad raised his hand. You want to be on your own? Then be on your own. No one stood when I left. The next morning, my name was gone from the group chat. No calls, no questions, just a single text from Mom. Do not come to Easter. No love. Back in the present, I stood slowly and walked toward the porch. The screen door hung on one hinge. I stepped over it. Inside, the air smelled of mildew, cold metal, and something older, like a memory that had grown mold. The floors creaked beneath my boots. There were holes in the drywall big enough to put your hand through, but it didn't matter. No one else had ever made space for me. I'd make it myself. The kitchen had no appliances, just an old fridge with its door left ajar like it had given up. I sat on the cracked linoleum legs, crossed, and leaned my head against the wall. The paint flaked beneath my hair. I closed my eyes, and the memories flooded in forgotten birthdays, off-to-the-side Christmas cards. The year I got straight A's, and a maybe next time when I asked to join a college tour. The time they left me home for the Florida trip because the car was full. I was 28. My fingers brushed against the corner of an old photo stuck beneath the fridge. I pulled it free. My 16th birthday. A cake with pink frosting, my name spelled Rowena. 1 N. Always 1 N. They never fixed it. Didn't even notice. Brielle got a Volkswagen that year. I got cake, and in next year when I asked about driving school. I stared at the photo until my fingers ached. They never saw me, did they? I whispered. Not really. I'd been background noise. Useful when needed, quiet when not. The light was fading through the kitchen window. I stood pulling a faded floral curtain from my bag, one I'd kept since college. Climbing the stool I'd found by the back door, I tried to wedge the rod into the frame. It slipped, then fell with a metallic clang. The sound echoed through the empty house. I rubbed my elbow where it had hit the wall and sat down again. I didn't fix the curtain. I just breathed. They say hard work gets you seen, that if you show up, do what's asked, and try a little harder than everyone else, someone will notice. I used to believe it right up until the moment I realized it had never been about effort. It was about being the kind of daughter they'd already decided to love. The house was quiet that morning. Cold air seeped through the cracks in the walls and touched the base of my spine. I held a paintbrush in one hand and a half-used can of primer in the other. The idea had seemed good enough, paint something, make it feel like mine. But the brush trembled slightly in my grip. Not from cold, not really. The first stroke went fine. The second skipped. By the third, the brush slipped and smacked the floor, splattering a small defeated circle of off-white on the linoleum. I bent down to wipe it, but my hand froze, still gripping the rag. A memory crept in, sweet frosting and the sharp scent of birthday candles. 16. I had stood in our living room in a paper crown from the dollar store while Mom carried in a lopsided cake with my name written in pink gel icing. Only it wasn't my name. Not really. Rowena 1N. They never asked, never corrected it. The candlelight flickered across Brielle's face as she snapped pictures, calling "Smile, birthday girl," like she meant it. I did smile then. I still believed it was an oversight. Brielle's 16th came the year after. She walked outside to find a shiny silver Volkswagen in the driveway, complete with a red bow, and Dad grinning like she'd cured cancer. "You deserve this," he said. "All your hard work." She'd barely pulled a C average. I had straight A's and a scholarship letter no one opened. I sank down onto the floor brush, forgotten, and let the cold seep into my legs. The walls were still streaked with old glue from where someone had tried and failed to hang wallpaper. Little bits of pattern remained, faded daisies corners, curling like they were retreating from the room. A photo lay on the table behind me. The graduation picture. Brielle's camera dead center. Her arm extended in the perfect influencer pose. And me, a sliver of shoulder barely visible behind her elbow. I'd asked them to retake it. "I'll edit you in," Brielle had joked. They framed that version. I picked up my phone and called Maeve. The signal crackled like it was coming from somewhere older, somewhere safer. "Hi, baby," she said. "You all right? I don't know," I replied. I just needed to hear someone say, "I'm not crazy." "You're not," she said without hesitation. "You were never the problem. You just weren't Brielle." I closed my eyes. Her voice felt like a blanket pulled over shivering shoulders. "You know what I think," she continued. "They saw you. Of course they did. They just chose not to see you. Some people do that when you don't fit their frame." There was silence between us, but not the kind that bruises, the kind that lets words settle like warm bread. "I feel like I was a background prop in someone else's highlight reel," I finally whispered. "Sweetheart," she said gently. "They'll come back when they need something. They always do. But don't you dare forget how this feels." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "I won't." After we hung up, I wandered back to the table and found another photo stuffed between old receipts and paint samples. My college graduation. They'd come dressed perfectly. Brielle had worn white, of course she had. I'd asked her not to, but she laughed, said it was timeless. She stood in front of me in every shot. All but this one. In it, my shoulder peeked out from behind her. The tassel from my cap barely made it into frame. I flipped the photo over, picked up a pen, and wrote in steady final strokes, "This is not who I am." Then I slipped it under the corner of the lamp and let it rest there like a quiet rebellion. The first knock was too delicate to be the wind. The second came sharper, more intentional, followed by the unmistakable sound of heels on concrete tap, pause tap. I didn't move right away. From the small window beside the door, I caught a glimpse of cream cashmere and a familiar silhouette adjusting her sunglasses like she was posing for a perfume ad. "Brielle." She didn't wait. She turned to the side and called out, "Just checking in on my sister to Mrs. Castor, who was raking leaves next door." The woman didn't respond, but her glance lingered just long enough to register judgment. When I opened the door, the cold air rushed in before Brielle's perfume did something floral and overconfident. "Well, there she is. The homeowner," she said, drawing out the last word as if it were a punchline. "Honestly, this neighborhood has really gone downhill. Do you get raccoons here?" I didn't respond. Her gaze swept over the porch like she was appraising the damage. "Look, I won't take up much space," she continued, stepping closer. A pipe burst at the spa wing. "Total nightmare. I just need a place for a night or two, maybe 3, until the contractor sorts it out." I kept my arms folded, leaning slightly against the frame. Her coat alone probably cost more than my mortgage. "You're not going to make me sleep in my car, are you?" she added with a practiced laugh. One night I said flat, "Don't touch anything." Her smile flashed like a reward. "You're the best. You always were." Inside, she breezed past me, her heels clicking against the scuffed floorboards. She paused briefly near the couch, lifted a throw pillow between 2 fingers like it might bite her, then let it drop. "That smell," she murmured. "Is that vintage dust?" I ignored her and walked back to the kitchen. I could feel her eyes following me, cataloging every imperfection. That night I couldn't sleep. The house creaked in places it never had before. I made coffee at 10 p.m., just to hear something familiar. Around 11, I heard it laughter. Not the warm kind, the kind that makes your skin prickle. I walked toward the living room, the floor giving me away with every step. Light poured out before I saw her harsh and cold from the ring light she'd somehow managed to set up beside my worn-out couch. The room smelled of burning lavender and oat milk. Brielle was perched on a kitchen stool, camera perfectly angled, full makeup, perfect hair. "Say hi to my angels," she cooed into her phone. "We're doing something really meaningful today. I wanted to show you guys where my sister, bless her heart, has been living. It's a bit of a fixer, but we love a transformation, don't we?" The camera panned to my fridge. This hasn't worked since like Y2K. And the floor. It's giving. Generational trauma, chimes of comments rolled in. Then she swung the phone toward me without missing a beat. "Look who's up. Say hi, squatter chic." Something inside me went still. I walked forward, slow and silent. She didn't even notice at first. I reached out and pulled the phone from its tripod in one motion. The suction cup let go with a soft pop. The screen went dark in my hand. Brielle's smile froze. "Hey, what are you want content?" I said, voice low. "Here it is. Get out," she blinked. "Wait, what? You don't get to turn my life into a spectacle. Not here. Not anymore." She opened her mouth again, but I handed her the phone like it was something toxic. She stared at it, then at me. "I was just trying to help," she said, voice trembling for the benefit of no one. "I thought if people saw—" "You thought they'd pity me and praise you." The mask cracked then, just a little. She gathered her things, her movements loud, dramatic. As she headed for the door, she made sure to say it with a sigh, loud enough for anyone imaginary watching. "This is what I get for being a good sister." I didn't answer. I didn't move. The door closed with a soft thud behind her. I stood in the stillness, surrounded by the echo of filtered light and false concern. The ring light hummed quietly in the corner. Still on. Still waiting for someone to perform. The ring light stayed behind. She didn't unplug it, didn't ask if I wanted it back. Just left it humming in the corner like a ghost of her performance. I didn't touch it either. Some things are better left buzzing in the dark, proof that they were never real. Outside January rolled in with the kind of cold that crawls inside your sleeves and settles in your bones. The house was still a mess, but it was my mess now. There were nails in the window frame, a thrifted lamp on the side table, and a couch that squeaked when I shifted my weight. I liked the squeak. It reminded me someone was still here. That morning, I curled my fingers around a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee and opened my laptop. No plans, just routine. A scroll to catch up on the lives of people I hadn't spoken to in years. Then I saw it. A headline pinned to the top of my feed, "Help my sister rebuild." The photo was of me, half-turned hair, pulled up, sweat on my neck. I remembered that day. I'd been dragging trash bags to the curb. The caption read, "My baby sister has been through so much. Let's give her a fresh start." I stared at the screen. Her name was on the account. The fundraiser had already pulled in over $18,000. Recipient, Callista Vale Business PayPal. I clicked through the gallery. More photos of me. One of me curled up under Maeve's quilt, another of the kitchen with the broken tiles, another taken through the window when I'd fallen asleep on the couch. I tried to report it. The platform responded within seconds. "This campaign does not violate our community guidelines." Of course it didn't. Betrayal knew how to coat her lies in just enough honey to taste like truth. My hand hovered over the trackpad, and then a message slid in. It wasn't from anyone I knew, just a username Lanagreer. "Paralegal, hi, you didn't authorize that, right? I'm a paralegal. Just came across the GoFundMe. Looks like civil exploitation, possibly wire fraud if misrepresented. Want help?" I blinked. I didn't cry, I didn't shake. I just replied, "Yes." Her response was instant. Clean, professional. "Start with screenshots, full-page captures, timestamps, archive comments if possible. Don't engage publicly. Don't give her a heads up." For the next hour, I became a machine. I documented everything. Screenshots, comment, threads, donor messages, payout histories. I found at least 3 posts where Betrayal implied I'd lost my job, 2 where she referred to me as in crisis, and 1 where she referred to the house as unlivable. My hands moved faster than they had in weeks. I felt like I was building something, except it wasn't a case. It was a boundary. That afternoon, Lana and I got on a call. Her voice was steady, no nonsense. She framed it like a humanitarian act, she said, but the funds went to a business account under her LLC. That's not family support. That's monetizing misrepresentation. I stayed quiet. Let the words sink in. I already knew the truth, but hearing it confirmed legally gave it shape. "We'll prepare a cease and desist," she continued. "Want to time it with anything?" I didn't know what she meant at first. Then I remembered the ring light. "She does live streams," I said. "Public ones. For her followers." Lana paused. "We send it midstream. Someone hands her the envelope while she's live." I nodded slowly, imagining it. "She won't be able to edit the moment out," Lana added. "It'll break the performance." There was a long silence between us. Then I said, "Let's make sure she sees it on camera." We finalized the details. I sent her everything: photos, the fundraiser's pitch, even the comments where people called Betrayal a saint. The house was quiet, except for the wind pushing against the walls. The kind of quiet I used to associate with dread. Now it just felt clean. That night I logged into my burner account and scrolled through Betrayal's story. A new post sat at the top: raw, unfiltered. Q&A this Friday. Let's talk family. I read it twice, then leaned back into the couch, my fingers still warm from typing, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. She opened the envelope mid-live stream. Her eyes flicked down once. And that was all it took. You could feel it ripple through the room like someone had cracked a window on a stage that wasn't supposed to breathe. The wellness gala was held in a ballroom that looked like it had been filtered in real time, everything soft golden, intentional. Someone had arranged eucalyptus branches at every table, and there were tiny glass bottles of chlorophyll water nestled between votive candles and pastel affirmation cards. The screen behind the podium projected swirling animations of butterflies morphing into hearts. It all smelled faintly of cucumber and lavender. I sat in the back wearing the same navy dress I'd worn to my cousin's rehearsal dinner 3 years ago. The heels pinched. The locket around my neck felt heavier than usual, like it had collected all the unsaid things from the past year and decided to carry them for me. I wasn't there to be seen, just to witness. Betrayal was already glowing on stage. She moved like the room owed her applause. Her gown shimmered under the lights, a pale blush silk that hugged her frame and floated as she walked. She opened with a smile. "We're all healing together," she said into the microphone voice, soft and rehearsed. "We've been through collective trauma, haven't we? And when one of us rises, we all rise," the crowd murmured in agreement. Phones were already raised. Behind her, the screen played a slideshow, smiling children volunteers handing out supplies, a soup kitchen Betrayal had never stepped inside. She narrated each slide like she had lived the stories. "This," she said, gesturing to a stock photo of a woman holding a hand-lettered thank you sign, "is why I do what I do." I watched her hands. They never trembled. She knew how to hold attention, how to pull people in with a well-timed laugh and a tilt of her head, but she didn't know how to spot a courier. Halfway through the Q&A, a man in a tailored black suit walked quietly up the side aisle, envelope in hand. He didn't interrupt. He simply stepped into her line of sight and extended it. Brielle smiled politely, assuming it was another sponsor form or maybe a donation acknowledgement. She took it without looking. Then her eyes dropped. 1 beat. 2. Her mouth parted just slightly. She blinked once. Then again. The music looped too long on the speakers, one of those ambient tracks meant to soothe, now suddenly dissonant. Someone coughed near the front. A few heads turned. Brielle looked up, but her smile didn't return. She tried to say something, but the mic picked up only the breath she didn't finish. Behind her, the screen flickered. The slideshow stopped. Then a text message filled the screen. "Let her rot. Trauma cells." A gasp rolled through the crowd like a tide hitting a seawall. Another message appeared. "She's good for sympathy points. Keep the cameras low. Show the cracks." Hashtags started popping up in real time on audience phones. Callista exposed. Trauma for profit. Who's the real sister? I watched Brielle's hands tighten on the envelope. Her face, usually animated and immaculate, slackened as if someone had pulled the plug on the current running through her. She turned toward the screen, her body half-shadowed now, and reached out like she could pause it. But it didn't stop. One more text appeared. "She'll never say anything. She's too proud." And then static. The projection went black. Aunt Nadine stood near the front table, clutching the speech she was supposed to read. Her silver necklace glinted as she rose. Slowly, deliberately, she walked toward the stage. Brielle stepped back, unsure. The mic was still live. Nadine didn't look at her. "I was asked to speak about hope," she said, voice low but carrying. "To talk about rebuilding trust, about how families pull together in times of need." She paused. The room stilled. "But I can't do that, because for too long this family has worn a mask. We smiled in public. We shamed in private. We propped up one child while another quietly disappeared. A few people shifted uncomfortably. One woman lowered her phone. Another pressed her lips together and nodded. "I'm done pretending," Nadine said. "Tonight I stand not with what looks good on a flyer, but with what is right." And then she stepped off the stage, walked down the aisle, and without asking, without hesitation, wrapped her arms around me. The flash of cameras followed. Not loud, just constant. Quiet judgments and new headlines taking shape in real time. Brielle stood frozen near the podium. Her eyes darted from me to Nadine to the crowd. Her fingers curled tightly around the envelope, like it could still protect her. Then she turned. Her heels clicked across the marble too quickly. She stumbled once her gown snagged on the leg of a chair, but she didn't stop to fix it. She didn't look back. I didn't follow her. I just watched her leave. And for the first time, everyone else did too. The text came 2 weeks later. No apology, no context, just, "Hey, things have been rough. Can I crash with you a few days?" I stared at the message thumb hovering above the screen. There was no punctuation, no real question either. Just the expectation tucked neatly between the words like she assumed the door was already unlocked. Outside the neighborhood, cleanup was in full swing. Someone had set up a folding table with plastic cups of lemonade and a mismatched tray of brownies. Kids were chalking the sidewalks, drawing suns and stick houses with crooked chimneys. The air smelled faintly of grass clippings and dryer sheets like home, if home had been allowed to breathe. I pocketed the phone and returned to rinsing a sponge in the bucket by my feet. The wood of the porch railing was still damp from my morning touch-up. Pale yellow paint clung to my fingers. It was the first color I'd chosen for myself in years. "Want me to carry this to the curb?" asked George, my neighbor from 2 doors down. He was holding a busted kitchen chair I'd never bothered fixing. "That'd be great," I said, smiling. "If you can make it without it collapsing on you." He laughed. "No promises." The rhythm of the day carried on. No one asked me what I did for a living. No one asked about my family. They just passed the lemonade and complimented the brownies. I didn't need to explain who I was anymore. When things quieted down, I went inside. The light through the front windows was soft, filtering through the new curtains I'd finally hung last week. They weren't perfect. One side drooped half an inch lower than the other, but they stayed up. The house didn't echo the way it used to. There was a hum to it now. Books stacked beside the couch, a vase of grocery store tulips on the table, the slow tick of a clock someone had gifted me when I moved in. It felt chosen. Not escaped to not survived in, just mine. I set my phone on the entry table and looked up. There above the coat rack hung the photo. I'd framed it just last month. Me at 8 years old in a wrinkled paper crown and sparkly costume from a school play I barely remembered. Everyone else in the photo was a blur turned away or mid-laugh. But Maeve was clapping like I was lighting up the whole room. The note beneath it, written in her neat handwriting, "You always had the light, A." M. I ran my fingers along the edge of the frame. She used to say, "You can forgive, but don't confuse that with unlocking your door again." It had sounded harsh when I was younger. Now it sounded like mercy. I picked up the phone. The screen still glowed with Brielle's message. I typed slowly with care. "There's no space for lies here anymore. I wish you peace." Then I pressed send. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't expect one. A tap on my knee pulled me back. "Miss Marin." One of the neighbor kids. Lena, I think, was holding up a chalk drawing on thick white paper. "I drew your house." The sketch was lopsided colored with bright yellow scribbles for the siding. A stick figure stood out, front arms open wide. Above it was a giant sun radiating lines in all directions. I crouched beside her, smiling. "You got it just right," she grinned. "I added the sun 'cause you always say the porch feels warmest when it's out." I nodded, heartful in a way that didn't press or ache. Just steady. That was the thing they never understood. I hadn't rebuilt to prove anything. I rebuilt to finally live. The chalk drawing still sits on my fridge, my little house, a stick figure in front, and a sun too big for the sky. It reminds me that peace doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it just walks quietly through the door you built yourself. And if you're lucky, it stays. What I learned is, this being erased doesn't mean you disappeared. Sometimes it means you outgrew the frame they built for you. Forgiveness is powerful, but boundaries are love wearing grown-up shoes. In a world full of noise, there's strength in choosing silence when that silence speaks for your worth. If this story stirred something in you, if you've ever felt unseen in a room full of family, know you're not alone. I'd love to hear your story too. Share your thoughts below, or with someone who needs to feel less invisible today. Sometimes healing starts with a single sentence spoken out loud.